This video details some of the sights we saw on a recent camping trip from Michigan to Nova Scotia. We traveled almost 1,700 miles one way and spent 6 days getting there, 6 days at Nova Scotia and Bar Harbor on the return trip, and 6 days getting back. We only traveled maybe 300 miles a day, but towing an RV all day long gets really old fast, and after 300 miles I was pretty much beat for the day. We visited Peggy's Cove, which is a short drive from Halifax. And this is a monument to Peggy of Peggy's Cove. And one of the legends on why Peggy's Cove was named Peggy is she was the only survivor of a nearby shipwreck. And here you can see the main harbor, which is quite quaint. And this is still an active lobster fishing village, and they bring in lobster on a daily basis. And there are also a few bed and breakfast areas, so you can stay here overnight if you wish. And the reason I'm narrating this is it was very windy that day and the audio didn't come out on the original recording. And this is the lighthouse at Peggy's Cove. And at this place you can cook your own lobster. Next we visited Halifax. Unfortunately I lost all of my video, so I still had some still photos from another camera, so I'm narrating those. And we took a double-decker bus, as you see here, and it was operated by Gray Line Tours, the same outfit that does the double-deckers in New York City. So it was a hop-on, hop-off, so you could stop anywhere you wanted, get off the bus, see the site, then hop on the next bus as it comes by. And here are a few photos of the downtown Halifax area as we go to our first stop. Now today we had a cruise ship in town, so there was a lot more crowds than normal. But the day after there was 4 cruise ships in town that was diverted from the Hurricane Florence. So it was even more crowded the next day. Our first stop was at the Halifax Public Gardens. And I suppose in some sense it's kind of like New York's Central Park, however on a much smaller scale. Now this gate is reserved for the Queen of England. The 2 small gates on either side are for common folk, so they still love their queen in Halifax. And the florists really manicure the flowers. Now this is kind of interesting. This is a cactus. We thought, boy, they must be having some kind of a cold weather version of a cactus. Later we found they actually removed the cactus for the wintertime and put it into a greenhouse for safekeeping until the weather becomes nicer. Our next stop was the Citadel, which was a fort that was constructed by their concerns about being attacked by the U.S. And of course that never happened, so the fort was really never used for that purpose. However, it also protected the harbor. And our last stop was at the local cemetery where many of the recovered Titanic dead were buried. And it's really eerie seeing that the date of death is the same on every one of their grave sites. And after the tour bus dropped us off, we took a stroll along the waterfront of Halifax. And I have to say, it's a very clean city, a very nice scenery. Right on the waterfront, there's things to do there. You can eat, although if you want a $16 hamburger, that's kind of expensive. Impromptu musicians, outside cafes, you name it. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous area. And we really enjoyed just being downtown for a few hours. Next, we visited Burnt Coat Head Park, which is on Funday Bay. And it has a distinction of having the highest recorded difference between low tide and high tide at over 70 feet. Now that was during a storm, so that was unusual. But under normal conditions, and depending on the time of the year, it can be as high as 50 feet without having a storm. So here I am at Burnt Coat Head, walking on the floor of the ocean. How about that? It's low tide right now, and this is looks like a 30-foot difference in high and low tide. And in about 3 hours, the tide is going to start coming back up, and they warn you to get the heck out of Dodge as soon as that starts rising. And of course, at low tide, the water is receded, and that little area between this island and the mainland is accessible. But when the tide comes in, that's all underwater. Unfortunately, in the time we had available, we only saw a very small portion of what Nova Scotia has to offer. We sure would like to go back again sometime and see the rest.